All right, it is 3 p.m. and we will call the regularly scheduled Hutchinson Utility Commission meeting to order and lead off by swearing in our new commissioner, Tom Lambert.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Tom Lambert,
I, Tom Lambert,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Hutchinson Utilities Commissioner
of the office of Hutchinson Utilities Commissioner
for the city of Hutchinson, Minnesota,
for the city of Hutchinson, Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Officially, welcome to the commission.
Welcome.
All right, next item on the agenda is conflict of interest. Do any of the commissioners have a conflict to declare?
None.
All right. Next, we will address our commission reorganization. So these positions would change coming in the February meeting. First, president for the next year term. I nominate Matt Cheney for that role.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, vice president.
I'll nominate Troy Polis.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Matt, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we need a secretary.
I make a motion to nominate Don Martinez.
I'll second.
Motion by Kathy and second by Matt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is legal counsel.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Mark.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Matt and second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the recording secretary. I'll make that motion to appoint Angie.
I'll
Second.
You can figure out the tiebreaker on that. Angie. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next on the agenda, item 2F is the designation of depositories for utility funds. We have listed here Citizens Bank and Trust, Wells Fargo Bank, Wells Fargo Advisors, Home State Bank, Morgan Stanley, and Cetera Investment Services. Anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to designate the depositories for utilities funds as noted.
I'll second.
A motion by Kathy and second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I believe that takes care of the reorganization. Did I miss anything, Angie? All right. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the prior minutes and ratification and payment of bills. Does anyone have anything to pull out of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Kathy to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have item 4, approval of financial statements. Jeremy.
So I'll kind of go through that. Jared's wrapping up the audit, so their last day at field, in-field kind of accounting stuff is today, so then they'll wrap up the rest of it here over the next month or two back in the offices in Litchfield, and we'll get a draft. And hopefully back in March typically is when we'll go through the financial presentations and have you guys approve the final audited financials. But in the meantime, we got the December's financials in here through year to date. Again, keep in mind these are unaudited, so we still have to make some year-end adjustments. Some of you guys have been around a while. We still have to make the pension adjustment at year-end. So we're anticipating getting that information probably in February from the state. So we have a pension adjustment that need to be made that will affect salaries and benefits area. And then Jared has to make an additional entry for benefits to move over to the gas division. We've got some salary dollars in the electric division that haven't been allocated over for system control. So system control, we split salaries and benefits between the electric and gas division since they monitor both systems. So we got a few things like that we need to do on the salary side. Overall, we're coming in above budget, better off than budget at year end here. Again, some of the things we've talked about, just reiterating on the electric division, sales for resales is down just under $1.5 million. Obviously, the biggest piece of that is Unit 1 was out all of last year, so we didn't have the ability to do market sales or get into a tolling arrangement. Already been in contact with a few wholesale suppliers that are looking to get into that, so I'm going to be looking at quotes potentially or talking with staff to get back into something like that, hopefully sometime this year where we can start generating some additional revenue there. So on that side, that's the biggest piece. Actual retail customer sales, even though we were down just a hair end of the year, the two big things there are obviously our retail rates. You know, we've got that sliding retail rate increase, so that generated some additional revenue that we wouldn't have got because of that conscious effort to raise rates to cover our operating costs. And then we had generated about $250,000 more in power cost adjustments than we did last year, so that's the other piece of that retail revenue that increased rates or increased revenue this year. Otherwise, on the operating side of things, as kind of anticipated, purchase power came in a little bit lower. Most of that was market purchases. The pricing was a little lower this year than last year. Otherwise, our MRES, our wholesale supply costs, have ticked up. So those increased wholesale costs were offset by cheaper market prices. And then transmission was down a little bit. We didn't have some peaks that we typically do in the summer month, and Dan will show you a little bit of those graphs, and so we saved some transmission expenses there. Otherwise, some operating costs and things were pretty consistent. On the electric side, and then on the gas side, really the couple big anomalies which we've touched on the transportation side of things. Transportation revenue, that's up $950,000. Again, that's the Heartland Corn new transportation agreement we have in place, and that started, if you recall, back in December of 2023. So, next year's financials 25 over 24, there'll be consistent revenue now because they'll have been in place for a year. And then on the other revenue side of thing, that $845,000 better over last year was basically most of the reimbursement for the transmission lateral project for Heartland Corn. So we billed out about $1 million in reimbursement for that project. So when you look at other revenues for this year, that won't typically be the case in that other revenues area. It'll be more like 2023s where we may generate $400,000 to $500,000 in other revenues, but it won't be that type of project next year. So those are the big things on the electric or on the gas side, on the revenue side. And then on the purchase gas side of things, the expense side of things, we are down. We ended up better than what I thought it was going to be. We ended up, December was a better month, significantly better than last month. If you can see, we're up almost 30% on gas sales because December was cold this year. So we ended the year just under 5% lower than last year. So hopefully this year, with the January weather that we had and in February looking to be more moderate, that we'll be back more in a budgeted number. But on the purchase gas, since our consumption was down, our purchase gas expenses were down. A couple big things there. Our fixed pricing for gas now is cheaper. So going into 2024, we were paying $4.53 a decatherm. We're down to $4.08 now, so we're saving 45 cents, and that goes out to 2029. So that'll be a consistent fixed price of $4.08. So we've seen savings there. Also, the spot market gas was down this year, and the additional amount that we have to buy above our hedged fixed price was down compared to last year. So we had seen some savings there. And then we also, if you recall, we entered into that prepay deal with our volumes, so we ended up saving an additional 4 cents a decatherm on that. So those three things help keep our purchase gas down. Why that's important is if you look down at the credit, we gave back $443,000 in credits this year to our customers, and last year we ended up having to collect $74,000. So we saved the customers about a $500,000 swing there that went back to the customers. So that's a significant, important piece for the customers. Even though our retail prices show that, if we don't need to collect that, we give it back to them. So, so we had a huge thing there. Otherwise, you're an expert again. Outside of the audited and some of the year-end adjustments that need to be made, we'll end up better than we were. Cash balance, obviously, we've ticked that down with the purchase of the unit. We had some obviously cash outlay for the the substation. So we haven't done any financing for that, so that's going to continue to dwindle until we do some financing. But we'll touch on that, and I'm almost done with the financing stuff. Cash flow here over the next month, we'll try to get together. I'll send out some stuff to start looking at. Otherwise, things kind of tracked as is. And the investment reports, as we talked a little bit about there, keeping more of it shorter term, just in case we want to use a little bit more of that cash in the short term for some of these financing projects. So, any questions on any of the financials or designation reports? Any concerns?
I just say, you know, that it looks like the return was the best since we've had since 2020. So, you know, kudos to you and the staff for that. We do see that current ratio starting to diminish down to more towards, you know, that 2, and we're at 3.6, but with more cash outlay, that'll keep dwindling, and I think that just goes right into your point of, you know, getting to the point where we want to look at that financing piece. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, we had the balance sheet in a place to do exactly the things that we've had to do in the last year.
Right.
So it's nice that we've been able to develop that strength. So good job. Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the financial statements.
I'll second.
Motion by Matt, second by Tom. To approve the financial statements, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the open forum. If you'd like to speak, you can. If not, you don't have to.
I'll wait until.
All right, very good. Thank you. Then we'll go into communication and start with the city administrator, Matt.
Not a whole lot. We're getting ready for our summer projects. The two big street projects are Dale Street and Hassan Street. And just a lot of interest on development, which is great. We'll kind of wait and see if they all pan out. So, and if you hadn't heard, the old Right Way building sold to Miller Manufacturing, so that'll be getting used here shortly. So,
Oh, good.
Miller from Glencoe?
yep.
Great. All right, thanks, Matt. Go to divisions. Dan?
I was gonna go over some of those charts that were included in the packet, if you'd like.
Okay.
Just a review of 2024, how it compares to previous years on the energy side of things. The first one is the average hourly load. You can see that red line, it's tracking below the previous 3 years. Kind of the theme, you know, our energy use has been down, consumption. Late spring, didn't get any of those warm spells, get people's air conditioners running. It was just a long, nice spring, and then fall was more like summer, and you can see that red line started to track a little closer to the black line as the fall went on. I believe we also had a commercial customer that had reduced load earlier in the year, and then they picked it back up, and so then brought that red line a little closer. So 2024 was down a little bit. The next chart is our generation chart I put together to show our previous, I guess, 20 years or so. Last year was down again. That's unit 1 was out of service all year, so that kind of tells that story there. Other than that, we ran downtown pretty hard all summer with our 3 units down there. And then the next chart is the system load again, just the total load for the town, down comparable to last year, but it was low again.
Okay. This was the height.
If you have any questions,
Yeah, that you can definitely see it go down. Is some of that just, you know, energy efficiency? Is it?
Well, in that, on the annual system load chart, if you go back, you can see it really started maybe in 2010, and one of our large industrial customers has been pulling back ever since then, and their load is really, really small right now.
Okay.
And if you factored that back in, that's probably 30,000 megawatts every year that we're missing compared to where they were in their heyday.
Sure.
And so we just lost that. Nothing's really filled that gap.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some of it's probably energy efficiency and things like that too, but that would be the biggest jump compared to 07, 08, when
Yeah.
we were really peaking there. That's kind of when things turned around in the economy as a whole, but we had the one customer that really started to pull back.
Yeah, there you go.
The load duration curve, we put that together every year just to kind of track to see how our Missouri River baseload contract fits our energy profile. Very similar to last year again. A lot of that depends on our total load, and the takeaway here is that the right edge of this chart where that blue line curves below the red line, that's showing how much energy we are reselling back into the market because we couldn't use it because our load was less than the base load contract, so it's less than 25 megawatts. So we have to sell it back, typically at a loss. Spring and fall, holidays, when our loads are down, those are the hours where we'll start selling some of that back. So we're about 1%, same as last year. Still not bad at all, but protects us on the upside a lot more than what we're losing on those lower numbers. So that we're selling back. And then at the bottom of that chart, I show where we source our energy. Again, 82% of our energy comes from Missouri River's baseload contract. 11% comes from MISO, we buy from the real-time market, and then 7% we generate ourselves. And that doesn't change more than 1% or 2% every year, very consistent. And then the last chart is 20 years of data of all of our energy costs. The bottom line, the blue line would be the natural gas cost. That's the average monthly cost. There's still some peaks in there from some of those winter events, drives the prices up, drives the average up for the entire month. But this past year's been low. Inventories are up. We had a really mild last winter as a whole country. So inventories are up and it's kept prices down. The next line up would be the red line. That's the cost that we paid MISO for the energy. Any energy we had to buy from MISO, average hourly prices. And you can see those were pretty low, mid-20s, not too bad. And then the green line would be kind of their all-in cost of energy, and that would include the Missouri River contract, the power we buy from MISO, and also the power we produce in-house with our generation, as well as transmission costs and a few other admin costs, but those are the big players, would be the power cost and transmission. And I think the takeaway here is that for almost 20 years we've been kind of oscillating between $50 and $60 a megawatt, which has helped keep our rates pretty steady. It's one of the factors in that, so we haven't had to be too aggressive with adjusting rates.
I'm guessing that's below kind of industry norms.
I'd say so, yeah.
And what do you look going to 25 and 26? Do we expect it to?
Natural gas prices are supposed to be trending around that $3.50, so don't see anything crazy there as long as nothing wild happens out in the world, geopolitics, things like that. And that's what happened in 2022. You can see gas prices rose up, which drove MISO prices up. And so as long as nothing there happens, we don't see much.
So everything builds off the gas price.
It really does.
The markets do, yeah. Our biggest needle change is the baseload contract, and that is anticipated to go up 5% every year-ish. So if their 5-year forecast, and we talked a little bit about this a couple months ago, their 5-year forecast is in play, that'll add about $500,000 to $600,000 in just the baseload contract each year. A couple reasons why they're doing that. One is they're looking to increase cash reserves for these transmission tranche projects. So they want to be able to take a lot of cash and use that as the investment versus doing all financing. So they're consciously looking to do that. Now, what will hinder on is if they actually get into those projects and what percentage are they a stakeholder in those projects. But that is their anticipation. They just did get awarded by South Dakota, so MRES and Otter Tail Power are going in and doing a 100-mile transmission stretch of one of the big tranches in the market. So they just got the state approval to do that. So now they need to get the market approval and some other approvals. But they're looking to make significant transmission investments, and partly how they do it is, raise rates on the wholesale members to generate cash to do that. Ultimately, it's supposed to be coming back to us when the projects are done, just like we are, and submitting your schedules. But that will be the biggest thing that changes the needle for us, is that wholesale contract, since it's 80% of our purchased power. So market prices, like Dan mentioned, have been pretty steady with gas prices. The forecast looks fairly reasonable for additional supply, storage. But yeah, that'll be the big pieces, MRES, what they do on their wholesale rates.
Okay.
What's our ideal market price for natural gas?
Natural gas, I mean, there's a couple things going on. If we could stay in that $3 to $4 range, that's what I'm hearing, all the conferences I go to, all the webinars. Depending on certain basins where the gas is coming from, some can drill and make money at $3. Some have to drill and, when it starts to be $3.50. So it depends on how much it takes to drill in those areas. But typically what I'm hearing is that $3 to $4 range is generally the sweet spot for, it's not too cost prohibitive to use natural gas for generation or to heat. There's enough that the production companies can make money and fund debt service and keep their balance sheet healthy. But they're getting smarter. The production companies are backing off on production when the prices start to dip down. So some of the bigger companies that have cash on their balance sheets, they can pull back production and keep supply down and keep that up. But that $3 to $4 range is generally what the experts say is the right pricing range. LNG will be a big thing, and export would be a big stuff. There's gonna be more global supply for our stuff, so that's gonna increase demand globally, which puts upward pressure on domestic gas. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, with federal, legislation going on, changeover at the federal level with the last election, that will have some potential play over the next 4 years as well.
So they can sell that gas for more money overseas?
They're already doing it last year. I mean, they were selling it over to Europe for $15, $15 a decatherm. We're 3 to 4 over here. So, obviously, with the war going on, Russia's cut off supply to Europe. So they're looking the big part of the demand is coming from the United States. So it's LNG's supply from down south. The Freeport gas terminal has come back online. So the global demand for natural gas is not going away anymore. We are the biggest exporter of natural gas now. So, and we just have a lot of supply here. So we're going to be competing more globally now than we ever have been. So that will create volatility in the market as well.
Sure. How does that get transported overseas?
They'll run it by ships.
Shipping. Okay.
In liquid form?
Yep.
Good discussion. Thank you, Dan. Good charts. It's always good to see the information that way. Dave, anything
I
today?
have nothing.
Mike? Angie?
Working on ocean for the end of the month.
Sounds good. Mark?
Nothing today.
All right. Back to you, Jeremy.
Just one thing, I know I sent out the Minnesota and federal priorities, so when you have a chance, go through those and read those if you can. If you have questions, let me know. Those are the things that we're talking about at the state legislature, and then also the federal legislative sessions coming up in February. The one that, some of them will have minor impacts to us. The biggest one that I'm watching right now at the federal level is the public finance tools. There's been talk about repealing advanced refunding and tax-exempt financing. So why that's important for us, why that's important for the city is we do tax-exempt bond issuances. So if they repeal those tools, that becomes a huge issue for us, right? Depending on the timing of when we would do financing. Typically, tax-exempt, you usually save 100 to 200 basis points by tax-exempt financing when you go out to the competitive market. So if things get repealed before we actually issue financing, there could be a potential where we'd end up having to finance at a greater cost, right? So that's the big one we're watching. We're hoping it doesn't get repealed because it's a huge public tool to put in infrastructure and projects. But they are getting some significant push from the private sector to level the playing field on financing. So, that's the push on their side is you don't have tax exemption for us, so it costs us more money to issue debt than it does for the public sector. But the pushback to that is a lot of these projects are going in not for profit, they're going in for communities and people, and so there's that balance going on. But it's already being talked about, so that's a major priority at the federal level that would have a direct impact on us or people that issue financing in the future if they repeal that and sequester some of that stuff. So we'll be watching that. I'll be sending some letters to our local delegation here at the federal level to support not getting rid of those financing mechanisms. So the other ones I would say are more minor in comparison to that one, but certainly take a look at that stuff and so you kind of know what's being talked about, and if you have questions, let me know. So.
Okay.
The city should sign off on those letters too. So if you want me, just reach out to me. We can I think it'd be good to have just both our voices reaching out.
Sounds good. I'm guessing we'll get something circulated here in the not too distant future with Senator, Fishbach and Team Smith and Klobuchar. So when I get it, I'll send it to you. You guys do more frequent financing than we do,
Yeah.
right?
So,
Okay. I will do that.
Good. All right. Item number 7, review policies. Doesn't look like we have anything to address for changes. All right. Item 8, we do not have any unfinished business, so we will go to new business and begin with awarding the Hutchinson substation construction contract to Heidecker Wheat Lake. Pretty close, at least.
Yeah.
All right. Hand it over to you, Dan.
All right, thanks. Yeah, we had our bid opening early this month for the construction of the Hutchinson sub expansion. We had 3 bids. The lowest bid, their bid was incomplete. And once they were notified that, they admitted it and immediately retracted it. So we went to the second lowest bid and evaluated that. Everything met our bid spec. And so at that point, we're recommending that we award the contract to Heidecker Wheat Lake for the construction of the Hutchinson sub expansion.
Looks like you've had DGR involved.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything to add there, Jeremy?
Nope, things are all good. Like you said, that one was a non-responsive bidder. And they were close in bids, and they would have been real close had they not omitted some pricing for certain things. So, but honestly, by our laws, if you don't meet the bid specs, you're a non-responsive bidder, and we have to throw you out. So,
Right.
otherwise, everything else looked good on the documents. Performance bond was issued, and the certificate of insurance has all been in.
Okay.
Will be put in place and stuff. So.
Any input here, Mark?
No, it looks like everything was evaluated properly, and from what I can tell, they met all the requirements, so.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the commission?
No? I'll make a motion to award the Hutchinson sub-project construction contract to Heidecker Wheat Lake Company.
Second.
We have a motion by Matt and second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, next item of new business is the review of the annual solar production. Is that yours, Dave?
Yep. So we installed the solar array, our 625 kW solar array back in November 21. And each year I try to give you an annual update of its output and production for the previous year. So in 2024, it's still operating at a high capacity factor. It's operated at 17.3% over 2024. It was down a little bit in generation from 23. The biggest problem, the biggest reason for that is over the months of June and July, we had 2 breakers fail. And those breakers that control the inverters, we had them come out. They gave us a temporary breaker, but it was down for a few weeks. And then it took a while to get them repaired. So they were in and out over those 2 months quite often. So that's one of the bigger reasons for the lower production. And let's see, and then and it does have a little bit less in cost savings, mainly for the LMP pricing still going down two previous years. So the LMP continuing to drop, our savings goes down with that. But as far as production, as far as it operating, it's still operating at a capacity factor higher than we anticipated. So
Were we closer to 20% in 20?
and we're 19% in 2023, but obviously with the breaker failures, those types of things we had to go through, that kind of brought that down a little bit, but still, we anticipate a better year this year now that we have everything operating again.
Okay.
We would probably anticipate it being at roughly around 19 with
Yep.
June and July wasn't down, which
That
were
was the biggest thing.
sunnier months.
Gotcha. So what's the capacity factor if they were in like Arizona or New Mexico where it's actually sunny a lot?
I couldn't give you an honest answer. My guess would be in the high 20s or 30s would be my guess, but I couldn't honestly answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's even in certain markets, some of the solar gets credited at 25%, some gets at 50%, depending on the region you're in. So we're one of the lower regions, the northern region in general,
Makes sense.
for that. Yeah.
It's nice to see that it's operating better than we had anticipated when we decided to install it. Any questions for Dan or Dave?
No.
Dave, all right. That's just review, no need to.
Yeah, it's just
action
an
on it.
annual update, just so we're in, see how that thing's producing, so.
Okay. We'll go right back to you on cogeneration and small power production annual tariff filing.
Yeah, so each year we have to approve a cogeneration and small power production tariff that is calculated with the previous year's costs. And so for our Schedule 1, which is our 40 kW or less arrays, that new tariff, and also for Schedule 4, which is for 40 kW to 100 kW. And those rates are attached. They're the new rates for residential, small general, and large general. And those are for those rates. And then for the Schedule 4 is our wholesale power rate. And those rates are used for purchasing excess power for those specific rate classes.
So that's the power they produce above what they use?
Above what they use in a 30-day billing cycle, correct. Right now, we have, I'll go over that in the next one with our
Okay.
attached.
All right. Any questions for Dave?
I make a motion to approve the cogeneration and small power production tariff.
I'll second.
Motion by Kathy and second by Matt to approve the cogeneration and small power production tariff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Dave, now we have review of the 2024 Distributed Energy Resources Cogeneration Report.
And then we are required each year to review all of our connected distributed energy resources that are connected to our system. We currently have 20 active solar distributed energy resources cogeneration facilities on our system today, 13 of which are commercial, 6 are residential, and 1, of course, is our utility owned. 5 of those are larger than 40 kW. We do allow over 40 kW as long as if they're over 40 kW, we require their energy to be used on site. We still net meter it, but their energy needs to be used on site over a 30-day period. So that energy we talked about, what we buy back, we have 6 systems that are 40 kW or less. They're to 39 kW, but they're on storage sheds. So they produce back quite a bit, but by law, we have to purchase that back.
Okay. So those ones, they make them 39 on purpose.
Yep, they make them 39 on purpose because they have the room for it and they have to be below 40.
Okay.
And then along with that is we go over and review our rules and our policy. That's attached as well. Nothing's changed in that for this year. It's the same policy and rules as we've done as last year, so there's no updates or changes to those. It's just more for review. And then, of course, attached is the usage from our certain classes, so. Our production. For any questions?
Are we seeing much interest in any additional installations?
We typically, like this last year, we had 2 systems. I mean, it's typically 1 or 2 a year. We had one inquire again here a couple weeks ago. They're just feeling out, looking at their usage compared to what the cost would be. So we typically get about 3 or 4 of those a year. Maybe 1 or 2 will actually do it.
Okay.
It's getting less each year, put it that way.
Not any incentives coming from the federal government. Are those kind of going away now?
They're still in place.
They're in place. They're talking about that. Obviously, with President Trump taking over, he wants to repeal some of those tax credits, production tax credits, investment tax credits for renewables, and quit subsidizing them. But there's a bigger conversation that the federal government subsidized nuclear, they subsidize some hydro some places. So, they're looking at that, but I think there's some intention to try to let these types of generations stand on their own merit without a significant subsidy. So we'll see where that goes. The other piece I wanted to mention on Dave's report that I brought up at MMUA that we're hoping that will be discussed at the legislative session at the state level is this average retail energy rate or buyback rate is more expensive. It's a higher rate than what we can pay for power, it's less than the retail rate, but it's a rate between retail and wholesale. And my argument is, when we have to buy back power, we're paying more for the power than we could have just going to the market or buying it somewhere else. Now, we don't have a ton of generation here, so it's not super significant, but other counterparties and other people have large solar arrays and large things that they're putting in and using that retail rate. And so that's a piece that should be talked about, that rate should be a cost avoidance rate or some rate that's not more expensive, because it's costing the utility more for that power than what otherwise would be paid for it. So
Can you remind us why that rate came to what it was? Was that partially?
really, it's a way to incentivize solar arrays.
Right.
So if you do the avoidance rate, which is the large general, anything above 40, it's our cost avoidance rate, meaning we'll pay it back for what we can buy it for. A lot of those people are putting them in. Those larger arrays are going in either for local generation or to meet regulations, regulatory requirements. But when you get into those smaller ones, it's a way to incentivize smaller customers to put them in so they have a shorter payback. Otherwise, a lot of people would do it. If they're having to buy the power, if we're having to buy the power back at 5 cents versus almost 9, you can see how long the payback on a project happens. So it's a way to incentivize putting in renewables, into the state. So it was kind of that middle ground of, hey, we're not going to charge the retail rate, but we have to look to charge you something more than the wholesale rate to incentivize the acceptance of solar. So that's partly why that class is called the average retail buyback rate, where the larger customers, it's an cost avoidance rate.
So it's really one of our more expensive sources if you have to buy it.
Correct, it is by far most expensive.
And then you can't mitigate those coming in either, right? You can't tell somebody no, right? If they want to put one in at 39, they can't.
39 and below, no. We have to accept that one.
I can see some issues there, especially in larger communities where
Yeah.
it can start to add up.
That's where we're not, some of them have, customers, some of our counterparties have 4 or 5 times, the numbers of people. Co-ops is another one, where you have more land to put in, smaller arrays. So they're talking about the size of the arrays as well now at the state of, does that need to be adjusted relative to the types of rates that you're putting in place for the different customer classes. So we'll see if anything comes out of it, but at least it should be talked about.
Sure.
So we'll see if it goes anywhere.
Okay. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approve the control system upgrade for the Wartsila unit number 5. Mike.
Yep, so staff and IEM Energy Consultant is recommending that we enter into a purchase agreement with Wartsila for the control system S-Voice upgrade, server upgrade. That's a capital project for 2025. Just a little refresher. We're currently running on Windows XP, computer-based system that's no longer supported for the Wartsila. So we're just looking to upgrade the system to a system that's supported and give us better troubleshooting capabilities. So just looking for the board to approve us going to a purchase agreement with Wartsila for the S-Voice contract for $513,000. And then, then I'll need some signatures if you guys are okay with that.
If I remember right, this was kind of a given, right?
Yeah.
The outside development was incredibly expensive
Correct.
for any
Yeah, it
other
came almost
alternative.
twice the cost.
It was over that.
Over twice the cost,
Yeah.
$1 million plus.
It must be one of the last few things operating on Windows XP, I would think.
Floppy disks.
Okay, any questions for Mike?
I make a motion to approve the control system upgrade Wartsila unit number 5 SWOIS as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, We have a motion by Kathy and second by Matt to approve the control system upgrade for the Wardzilla. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we have approved DGR engineering task order number 9, Plant 1 substation conversion. Gotta get there.
It's only 200 pages. Sorry, I don't have it up.
Who's got this one?
It's gotta be Dan.
Dan, okay. I didn't want to assume,
Yeah.
so, all right, all yours.
All right, we discussed last year in one of the meetings, Great River Energy wants to rebuild the line between Hutchinson and Litchfield. They're gonna rebuild it from 69,000 volts to 115,000 volts. And it's a good project that'll help us, help our capacity in town. But one of the things we're gonna have to do, be responsible for, is we're gonna have some upgrades at the Plant 1 substation. Because right now it's 69,000 volts. We're gonna bump that up to 115 to match that new power line. So what this would do, this task order number 9 would direct DGR to start that preliminary design, come up with some cost estimates, things like that, timelines, just kind of get that process started, because that'll be coming before we know it, the next project. And then that'll eventually tie in with the substation project, that new 115 line. We've got that designed in already. But
Okay.
this is just for the Plant 1 sub part of it.
Any questions for Dan?
Nope.
So this project, does it go along the same lines of the cost recoup down the road with infrastructure?
No,
No.
this will be distribution.
Okay.
It will not fall underneath the capture of those ATRR rates with the MISO. The power line that we're responsible for from Hutch Sub to the city border, or North High Drive-ish, that we can recapture, but the substation itself will not be.
Okay. But still, it improves our entire system by going this route.
Correct.
Any other questions for Dan?
I'll make a motion to approve the DGR engineering task order number 9 for Plant 1 substation conversion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Matt, second by Tom to approve the DGR engineering task order number 10. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, the McLeod substation relay upgrade.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that last one was a 2025 budget item. We had it in there. And same with this one. This is also a 2025 budget item. The relays at the McLeod sub are 25 years old now already, which is amazing to say, but they're due to be replaced. And so with this also, we're asking DGR to do that preliminary design and put that together for us so we can get those relays upgraded. They're 25 years old already. And these can be recaptured. Yep, exactly.
Okay. Any questions for Dan?
I make a motion to approve the task order number 10 to DGR Engineering for the McLeod substation relay upgrades.
I'll second.
Motion by Kathy and second by Matt to approve order number 10. Last one was number 9. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Hutchinson substation metering.
Yeah, back to the Hutchinson sub again. With the addition and improvements at the Hutchinson sub, the meterings have to get moved around, and there'll also be an additional meter that'll be included on this, with the breakers moving around and whatnot in the yard. So we're looking to have Great River Energy do that work for us. We already have a operation and maintenance agreement with Great River to do our metering testing periodically. It's a yearly thing they do. So we thought it would dovetail well to just keep them to have do the design and the commissioning and testing of these new meters. So we have a statement of work that we'd like to approve and send to them so they can start that process as well.
Any questions for Dan?
None?
It's another step in the progress of the whole project, right?
Yeah, a lot of little things coming together.
I'll make a motion to approve the GRE statement of work for the Hutchinson substation.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Kathy to approve the statement of work. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, we have approved requisition 010119 air stack emission testing for plant 1 and plant 2. Mike?
Yeah, so every 2 to 5 years, you gotta do stack testings at both plant 1 and 2. So this year, well, actually, unit 1 was actually due last spring, but obviously we couldn't do that because we didn't have a unit. And then after 185, 186 was installed in December, we have 180 days to get that done. But if we do all of it at the same time, then we only have to pay one mobilization. And units 5 and 6 down at plant, 5, 6, and 7 down at plant 1 are due at the end of March, so it makes sense to just combine them all at the end of by the end of first quarter here. And we had it figured into the operating budget for this year anyways to do both plants. So plant 1 comes in at 35,400, and plant 2 for the rata test on unit 1 it's 7,750. For a grand total of 42,900 for the 2 plants. Been working with Kurt Dunbar with HDR Engineering. He always comes out and helps us line the stack testing and ensures that all the testing procedures, everything is done per air permit, and reviews all the reports and make sure everything gets reported to the state correctly, and does all that. So per air permit and all that stuff. So yeah, just looking for your guys' approval of the rec. So
So how do you determine if it's 2 or 5 years?
we have a chart that we go off of that HDR provides us. So I just monitor that, and when it's time and everything falls in. So like unit 9 isn't due in this round. So everything else we have is.
Okay.
Based on the permits.
Yeah.
An amount of use or?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just depends.
Guidelines that the state puts out there.
Yeah,
Based on your type
it's
of
all part
units.
of our permit, and HDR sends me on a cheat sheet that's on the side of my desk, and I monitor it every year to make sure we got nothing coming up.
Good.
Like I said, like unit 1 was due last year, but we couldn't do it.
Sure.
So then everything that but we still have to report everything quarterly for unit 1, even though we didn't have it. So there was notes on it, and we had no unit to run.
Sure.
But we still sent reports in every quarter last year,
Right.
stating that once the unit was back, we would do our RADA as soon as we could. So that's what we're trying to accomplish now. So.
Makes sense. Any other questions for Mike?
Nope.
I make a motion to approve requisition number 010119.
Second. Motion by Kathy and second by Tom to approve requisition 010119. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I believe that completes the agenda today.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Matt and second by Kathy to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.